So let's look at the graph of the cosine graph. And to begin with, just some general definitions and ideas about the graph. We can build the cosine graph over a period of 2 pi, because that's a full cycle, by plotting some of the key points that we're already aware of. So if we drew these values of x and found their corresponding value, then we can just gently start to plot the curve and then draw in the points. Notice also too, there's some key points again. There's 5 key points: a maximum, a 0, a minimum, a 0, and a maximum along the first cycle of that point. And you can see them listed here. There's a key point, key point, key point, key point, and another key point. So far very similar to the sine graph, other than we have a different starting spot. The graph starts at the point 0 and 1, rather than where the sine graph started at 0 and 0. But other than that, the process is fairly similar. Things we need to be aware of or keep in mind is we have a domain that reaches all the way in both directions. We have a range that's restricted from -1 to +1. We have a period of 2 pi in a normal graph, so period equals a 2 pi. And then the cosine graph is an even graph, because we would know that the cosine of -x equals the cosine of x. So those are some of the key points that we take into function as we look at a cosine graph. Another thing that might be interesting to note is that, do you see maybe a little bit of the sine graph here as well? So maybe if I just kind of drew the sine graph on top. What does that look like to you? That sine graph looks like it's out of phase or has a phase shift of the cosine graph. And so that's true. So we have the cosine of x equals the sine value of x with a phase shift of pi halves. Interesting. Because of also too, both the cosine and the sine of these repeated graph that you see, this periodic type of a look, we can sometimes call them sinusoidal graphs as well. So there's a little bit of an introduction as we start to explore what a cosine graph looks like, and maybe some of the variations we can explore along the way.